Hello friends, I'm Danny J. Norwell, author of Fairly Familiar and Snapshots of Spain, and I recently earned the title the Queen of Staying on Track from some of my friends in the writing community based on the fact that I essentially wrote two entire manuscripts for two separate novels in the span of about 2 months. So this is an incredible amount of progress for me as well, and so I decided that I've definitely got a winning formula and I wanted to share with you the secrets to my success. I'm going to break this down into 5 main points, and it's really important to me that you listen to all 5 of them, because if you don't do all of these together, I really don't think that you're going to be able to reach the same measurable levels of success that I've had. So be sure to stick around to the end. Give me a like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. All right, first and foremost, I need to lay this out right from the get-go. I am a full-time author. I have a completely flexible schedule. Do not play the comparison game with me if that is not your situation. Do not play that game with anybody, in fact. There are so many people on the internet and even in your real life who have very different circumstances from you. So if you are comparing yourself to them, you're setting yourself up for failure. We've heard it a million times, but I need to drive this point home. Compare yourself to yourself yesterday, to yourself last month, to yourself last year, but do not play the comparison game. You just won't win. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2 is you need to have a deadline. You have to have a very specific date when you plan to finish whatever it is you're working on, to finish the draft, to finish the editing process, to finish a certain chapter. It doesn't matter what your deadline is for, but you need to have a deadline, and then from there you can work back and figure out what you need to have achieved before at each checkpoint in order to get to that goal on time. But I definitely used to just be this person who would go with the flow and see how long it took, and it took forever. If you set a timeline for yourself, if you set a hard deadline that you can be compassionate with, we'll talk about that later, but you have to have in mind a very serious endpoint, otherwise there's no way you're ever going to reach it. That's number 2. Now, once you have that very serious deadline in place, again, that takes into account your personal circumstances. Do not set a deadline to do it in 1 month because you saw me do that. Do not set a deadline to do it in 3 months because everybody else on Instagram is releasing their book after 3 months. No. Set the deadline based on your particular circumstances. Be realistic. You want this goal to be the perfect blend between something you can reasonably attain and something that's going to be a challenge. It has to be right there in the middle, otherwise it's not going to motivate you, okay? Now, getting back to point number 3. Once you have that deadline in place, I want you to go ahead and set weekly goals, not daily goals, weekly goals, and then track. For the first month or so, you don't know if your goal is really attainable. You don't know what you can expect to accomplish because I'm assuming you haven't been tracking yet. So it's really going to take some time to figure out your rhythm, to figure out what is normal for you so that you can see what you can achieve if you push yourself a little more or if you have to take a step back. Either way, it is so important to know what is your regular level of production, speed of progress, etc., etc. So, what am I talking about with these weekly goals? For example, it could be that you want to write 5,000 words each week. It can be that you want to edit 5 chapters each week. It can be that you want to write 1 scene. Again, we're not playing the comparison game. We're not judging what your goal is. It needs to be attainable, but a bit of a challenge for you. And then go ahead and track like crazy. I like to use Pomodoro sessions because this makes it really easy to see exactly how much time I'm using. So a Pomodoro session is a 25-minute segment, and then I'm able to just track and do a little tally each day about how much time I've spent, and then I will also track how many words I wrote. I don't need to do it each and every Pomodoro session, because if I do 4 Pomodoro sessions and I just divide that by 4, I can easily find out what my average was over each session, because hello, not everything is consistent. One Pomodoro session I might only be writing 300 words, and another I'm writing nearly 1,000 because it was dialogue and it's so much easier. So whatever it is, track it, but track over a longer period of time. And that's why I pointed out making these weekly goals instead of daily goals, because realistically there are going to be days when you can't write or you can't work on whatever goal it is you're working towards. This is a system that I believe will help anybody. You don't have to be a writer to utilize this. I'm simply using writing examples because they're what are applicable to my personal life. But keep track of time spent. Keep track of your own reflections. I like to just have a notebook where I put down things like, I didn't sleep well last night, or I had to do X, Y, and Z outside of my main project, so not as much got done. Those things are going to be really helpful for you when you come back later and you can see, okay, not sleeping enough really affected my ability to write a lot of words. Maybe I shouldn't be waking up at 5 a.m. each day if it means I'm not writing as much. Maybe I should wait until later in the day, have a full night's sleep, and squeeze in just a half hour of writing, and I'm really going to achieve even more than if I did it early. That's something that's probably very true for me, might not be true for you, but keep track of these things. See when you're most motivated, most inspired, and see when you're really being the most efficient with your time. It might be on the weekend, it might be in the weekdays, it might be morning, night, whatever. There's so many things that affect our progress, and so I really, really encourage you to track. That way you can see the trends. So these aren't just the numbers, these are the emotions as well. How are you feeling as you reach different milestones? Because that's going to tell you a lot about where you're at and how likely you are to reach those goals. All right, number 4, based on all that tracking, you need some time to check in with yourself. So I would say to set regular check-ins with yourself. These are check-in points when you're going to sit down and look at the goals that you wrote down, because I didn't mention that, but you really should be writing these down. These should be set in stone for yourself on paper, or at least on your computer or some other device, so that you can go back and see what it was you said you were going to do and how are you doing with it. And please take these as check-in points along the way. If your goal is to finish something in 90 days time, then you should really have check-in points 30 days and 60 days in. That way you have time to see if you're on track or not, and you have time to make changes to help you reach the goal. If you don't check in until the deadline you set for yourself, you either you got it or you didn't, and it sets you up to fail, because it's really normal that we don't know exactly what rate or what speed we need to be going at. But if we check in with ourselves just a third or a quarter of the way into that time frame, then we can adjust, we can see what's happening, and we can make changes to get to that goal or to conscientiously change it. It's also completely okay to realize that something is not working for you, or even realize that you've changed your mind about what it is you want to do, and then change that goal conscientiously ahead of time, so that when you reach that original deadline and you haven't done the thing, you don't have to feel guilty about it, because you chose to make changes, to move it back, or to go after an entirely different goal. So that brings me to number 5. I think it's really important to put into place things that are going to motivate you. So you really need to personalize your process. For me, I geek out over all the math. I love to figure out my averages and my percentages and where I'm at in the process. And if I've been averaging this many words per day, what percentage am I likely to achieve? I love to do that, and that excites me. That might be the exact opposite of what you want. You might hate the idea of that. You might want a game board where you can color in a piece each time you finish a scene, and then you could see the full thing come to life. You might want a reward system. There are so many ways to keep yourself motivated, but again, we're not playing the comparison game here. Figure out what works for you. Don't go for something just because you see it looking cool on somebody else's Instagram feed. Really, really personalize this to your own experience. So those are my 5 secrets. When I put these all together, I feel like I'm really capable and ready to succeed, and setting myself up for greatness is the only way that I know to actually achieve greatness. So as a wrap up, I will simply say, really the formula is to have specific and measurable goals, and this comes into your deadline, your weekly goals, your tracking, and those check-ins to see how you're doing. But also, you need to have compassionate self-evaluation. When you get to those check-in points, this is not a zero-sum game. It is not saying I said I'd write 10,000 words, I've written 8,000, I suck, I'm never going to make it, end of evaluation. No. It is taking a look at what you said you were going to do, taking a look at how much time you actually had to do those things, and working out, okay, was this a really tough month for me? Did I have a ton of stuff on my plate, and am I going to have less next month? Or do I foresee next month being very similar to this, and I need to just readjust and perhaps change my goal because it's not realistic for me? I think that many of us fail to reach our goals because we simply have goals that are too optimistic, or they're just not fit for our particular life circumstances at this moment. So these check-ins are really, really, really going to come in handy for letting you know where you are at and what is reasonable for you. Those are my tips. I hope that they help you. Let me know down below what you're going to be applying this advice to. I would love to cheer you on. And yeah, definitely share with others what your tips are if you do something different to help you reach your goals and succeed. Have a good one. Thanks for stopping by.